How do you take a guy like Jason Bailey and turn him into a monster? You could use a program like Photoshop and do something like this, but I needed something that moves. Fortunately, I know the internationally acclaimed photographer Steve Anchel. Here's his website. He was testing the Nikon D3 camera for Shutterbug magazine, and he used Jason as a test subject. Steve took hundreds of high-resolution shots. From them, I developed a series of progressively worse-looking portraits of Jason for my stage musical, Dorian-Gray. For this particular project, I picked out these two pictures. I like the face on the left, the eye on the right. In Photoshop, I combined them. You can do so much with an image program like Photoshop, and a lot of the work is in the layering, so that different parts of an image will be on a separate plane and they all melt together in the final product. I followed a really good tutorial which explained how to combine embossing with paintbrushes in Photoshop, so you can actually get a three-dimensional effect. So this is one of several images I needed to develop from Steve's pictures of Jason. From that same basic image, I needed a really horrific monster. I started with the background, getting a demonic glow around the face area. Then I imported the most dimensional version of the first face. And like all of these images, many layers were involved, and the monster grew from there. What you're seeing is actually a combination of several different individual Photoshop projects that were imported into this master file. The large forehead project, the white hair project. I imported images of burn victims and diseases like syphilis and leprosy. Using a photograph of a skull, I painted in sections of it over the central part of the face. All of these separate layers had been sculpted, warped, so that they fit the contours of the face. And I used the paintbrush at times, and various tools in Photoshop. Here I layered in what was based on the face of a very old man. I exaggerated his wrinkles until they were these black troughs that you see being superimposed now over the face and becoming an organic part of the final product. And there are so many parameters to use to determine how these layers interact with each other. When the picture was almost finished, I still needed him to be more fierce looking. So, based on a picture of Jack Nicholson, I developed a more frowning brow and layered that in. So far so good, but I need my monster to move. That's where MorphBusters comes in. It's one of the highest rated morphing programs, so I'm glad I went with it. $25. Here's an example from their site showing you what you can do. Just using two photographs, one of a young lady, one of a panther. Here's what the workspace looks like in MorphBusters. It's very intuitive, simply designed, laid out very clearly. First, you import the image you're going to be starting with. You've made your project file ahead of time. Here I am starting with the full monster face. It appears in the workspace on the left. Now I'm going to import the more human image of Jason. Now the idea is to morph back and forth between these two images. But what you're seeing here is a simple cross-dissolve. You wouldn't need MorphBusters to do that. Any video program could cross-dissolve between the two images. Fairly effective, but we can do a lot more. I'm going to the main work screen where you can see the two images side by side. The pencil is your main tool, dropping in nodes which anchor the image to that spot. When you place a node in one picture, a corresponding node appears in the other image at the same place. I've placed a node at the top of the monster's forehead, which of course is higher up than on the more human picture. In the second image, I grab the node and drag it down to the anatomically corresponding spot. Another example, the monster's hair is higher up on the image, of course, than the human one. So I go and I put a node at the end of one of his hairs. I look at the human face and drag that node down to a hair. The bottom window is a quick preview screen. Now we can look to see what's happening with our images now. You see, it's not just cross-dissolving, it's reshaping itself according to the nodes that we've placed. The program generates the intermediate images to make for a smooth animation. In these two images, a lot of the features are in the same location, but as soon as you have one drastically different detail, then the picture can warp in a way you don't want. So I placed anchoring nodes all throughout the picture, in the background and in the foreground, to keep things in place. The noses are different. I needed the fleshy nose to move up to fill the space where the skull's cavity is. In the preview window, I can see the morph is starting to look the way I want. You have several choices for the frames per second rate, and also of how many frames that the program will generate to bridge the gap between picture 1 and picture 2. And these controls will give you different speeds and different fluidity. Notice how well the two noses are going back and forth now, and also the foreheads growing and shrinking. In this closer, slower view, you can really get a good idea of how well it's changing. And look at the brow, the way it comes down when it morphs. You can string together several sequences like this to make one master video. In this case, there were two sequences I needed, so I moved on to the second one. In this part, I just needed two versions of the more human phase to go back and forth. And in this case, I just used cross-dissolving. There was nothing to morph, really. The final step is to program how these sequences play, backwards and forwards, looping, whatever you need. Now, here's the video output of the final project. Here's a glimpse of how this was used on stage. At the end of Dorian-Gray, his picture turns into this horrible monster. The performers could work in front of the screen because we used a video projector and rear screen projection material. Jason Bailey is a professional actor working in the northwest region of the States. Steve Anchel is currently located in Salem, Oregon. Please visit Steve's website and also find MorphBusters online and Adobe Photoshop. And the musical is Dorian-The Remarkable Mister Gray. Go to dorian-the-musical.com.